So I've been using the base 1599 M3 14-inch MacBook Pro for the last few weeks, and if you're wondering if you should buy this, here are my long-term thoughts and how this has been for my usage with only 8 gigs of RAM. So this MacBook is pretty easy for me to review because it's essentially the same MacBook they've been selling for the last 2 years, with some minor changes. Beginning with the design, this still feels like peak MacBook design. I really can't fault anything here, and yes, I know people are gonna complain about the humongous notch, but it's a non-issue in my opinion. I usually forget it's there, so I truly believe this design is perfect. The form factor especially offers the best balance, where it's portable enough whilst giving you some serious real estate. With that 14.2-inch panel coming from the M1 MacBook Air, the slightly larger display does make a difference. Also, fun fact, the M3 is ever so slightly lighter than its higher-end counterparts, so you pay less and you get less, which makes sense, I guess. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Also, I know this does not get the fancy space black option that I know everyone's still going gaga for, but honestly guys, unpopular opinion, I think it's a tad overrated. I'm glad we have this new color option, but I've always thought silver is the best color for Macs. It's a classic option and always looks terrific, and so yes, I'm happy to see that's available on this base 14-inch. Now I'm aware the M3 14-inch does lose one port on the right side, and it's only Thunderbolt 3 ports instead of Thunderbolt 4 like the other MacBook Pros, but the target demographic for this machine likely won't care about that. Yes, Apple calls this the MacBook Pro, but let's be honest, students who just want a fancier MacBook Air are mainly getting this, and so they likely won't care about those omissions. I certainly did not. Thunderbolt 3 ports are still perfectly fine, and 2 USB-C ports are not limiting at all, especially since you have MagSafe here, so when charging, those 2 ports are free to connect to peripherals. Plus, you get the same great HDMI ports and SD card reader like the other models, which can come in clutch. Now, because it does support Thunderbolt 3 and it's only the regular M3, this base model only supports one display up to 6K resolution at 60Hz, or one display with up to 4K resolution at 120Hz over HDMI. Now, am I outraged by this limitation? No, not really, because if you have multiple displays, you're loaded and you probably aren't buying the base 14-inch, and so this is a non-issue. Moving on to performance, in this machine we have the regular M3 chipset. It's got 8 CPU cores with a split of 4 performance and 4 efficiency cores, and also 10 GPU cores. And there's not much for me to say here because, surprise surprise, Apple Silicon is still great. I've been using the M1 MacBook Air for the last 3 years, and I've yet to have any major performance issues, and so M3 flies through everything I throw at it. Obviously, I've been mainly editing videos, it's regular 4K footage. I don't do many fancy edits, as you might have noticed with this video, but I'm probably pushing this machine a lot harder than most consumers because I've been editing videos on it every single day, and there's been no slowdowns since I got this back on launch day. I also surprisingly don't hear that single fan inside very often, so yes, performance is great all round, guys. By the way, I rarely play games, so I have not been able to test hardware ray tracing on this, but hey, I'll take the upgrade at the end of the day because even if it does not benefit me, if it does improve the gaming landscape for macOS so that others can more easily play games on this machine, that's terrific news. So let's now address the major Achilles heel with this MacBook, and it's the one thing that stops it from being absolutely perfect, and that's 8 gigs of RAM. Now, I won't lie to you guys, even a month later, I've not really picked up on this Mac slowing down because it did not have enough RAM, since unified memory on Apple Silicon's generally great. However, I don't think that's always going to be the case. You see, as the machine gets older and it becomes more taxing for this machine to run new versions of applications you use, I am very sure 8 gigs of RAM is going to start becoming a bit of an issue. So while it's fine for most right now, and even I can make do with it, I think it should have at least had 12 gigs of RAM to future-proof it. And yes, you can pay the extra for the 16 gig upgrades, but because Apple charges a ludicrous $200 for a single stick of RAM, the machine now becomes $17.99, which is very close in price to the M3 Pro. That's why I got the base model, because this is the one many are going to buy anyways, and ultimately, yes, you can get away with 8 gigs, but I still worry about how it's going to age. I strongly believe the reason I've been able to use my MacBook Air for the last 3 years without any issues is because I have the 16 gig version, and so yes, more RAM is undoubtedly going to be beneficial in the long run. To make things worse, the RAM's also soldered, so it's not like you can choose to upgrade this down the line, so ultimately I'm a little mixed on this choice Apple made. I think most consumers can make do with 256 gigs of storage, and so they should have given us 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage as the base configuration instead. And that's basically it for the changes with this machine. Everything else is very similar to older MacBooks, and that's not a bad thing because the M1 Pro and M2 Pro MacBooks were fantastic all round, and everything that was great about them applies to this machine as well. So for example, let's begin with the display. This is easily one of, if not the best display on a laptop right now. It's blown my mind how Apple's given the base model the exact same display as its higher-end counterparts, but I appreciate the mini LED, I appreciate the high brightness, I don't really care for 120Hz, but it's nice to have. And I think this will be the big reason many get this over the MacBook Air, because if you watch a lot of movies and TV shows, this display is perfect. Moving to the webcam, I'll be honest, many guess up the webcams on these new Macs, but I actually can't tell much of a difference between the 1080p FaceTime camera on this and the 720p FaceTime camera on my M1 Air. At the end of the day, it's a small sensor tucked behind the screen, so of course, I would definitely recommend using your iPhone via continuity camera instead. The quality your iPhone produces will be miles ahead. The speakers on this absolutely blew my mind, they sound insane, and I just can't comprehend that such a small machine has speakers that are this good. Again, this is a big reason to get the MacBook Pros over the Air. The mics are also crystal clear for calls, and are better than the Air as well in this aspect, and well, here's a sample for you guys. And here's a webcam and mic test for you guys on this MacBook. Let me know how this sounds. The keyboard is also fantastic, it's a pleasure to use, and the trackpad is perfection. It's nice and large, and every time I use a Mac, I come to appreciate how incredible Apple's trackpads are, because when I used to use Windows laptops, that was one thing that sucked consistently on all of them, and it seems Apple is the only manufacturer that can nail this part of the laptop experience. Touch ID has also been reliable, however, I'm praying Apple gives us Face ID on the Mac one day, because opening the lid and the laptop instantly recognizing you would be so clutch, and with the notch up at the top, I'm sure Apple could squeeze in a few sensors to give us this technology. In fact, I can't lie, Face ID makes way more sense here compared to the iPhone and the iPads, and could be Apple's answer to Windows Hello, so I'm very much hoping this is in the works, and we see it very soon. Connectivity wise, you have Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 support, and I've had no issues in this aspect. What's also been rock solid is the battery life. It's still bonkers and actually offers very similar battery life to the larger 16-inch. And I noticed I only dropped 9% of battery life once I finished editing for 2 hours. That's insane. It still blows my mind how efficient Apple Silicon is. Back when I was using Intel, it would be close to dead by the time I finish editing, so yes, this is easily the best thing about Apple Silicon Macs. They last forever, guys. So if I'm being honest, guys, over the last few weeks, my thoughts on the 14-inch haven't really changed. I still have really nothing to complain about. It's a tried and tested chassis. We have 2 great generations of MacBooks that are based on this, and so I'm glad the design's now available for a low price. The base M3 is definitely fine for 90% of consumers, and it's pretty awesome. You can now get mini LED and the better speakers the 14-inch has always offered for much less. Now, I'm still worried about how 8 gigs of RAM is going to play out 3 to 4 years down the line, but there is a silver lining because thankfully a month later, this Mac is often on sale for much less than retail price. Here in the UK, I've seen it for £100 less, sometimes £150 less. I'm sure in the US you can find even better discounts because you guys in the US are blessed with great tech deals. And so all of this does make it slightly easier for me to recommend, but here's hoping it continues to get cheaper and also hits Apple's refurb store soon. And talking about the refurb store, personally, if I wasn't reviewing products for this channel, I would just get the M2 Pro instead. That's on the refurb store for around the same price. It comes with 16 gigs of RAM as standards and also 1 extra port. I think the additional RAM especially is going to make a difference for those holding on to these machines for years. But if you do find the base M3 for much less than retail price, it's definitely a decent buy. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.